uh, at least the organized concept of solidarity is coming from clearly structured, rather homogeneous societies. And this is maybe why solidarity has been questioned throughout the last 20 or 25 years. Yeah. Not only out of, let's say, the greed of the financial markets. No, also because people got the feeling that the new challenges, the new contradictions in our society are not embraced by the concept of solidarity. So our concept of solidarity was giving answers to the old questions, but not to the new ones. And therefore, coming back to the test, my impression would be, yes, one has to meet the test of crisis, but the second one, to meet the test that solidarity is able to embrace all elements of modern pluralistic society, I think there is a long way to go.
Yeah. Well, you know, you make me think about that perhaps in Austria and certainly in Britain, that perhaps we spent too much time thinking about solidarity in ethnic and religious terms, and not enough about thinking about it in terms of class. Because what's happened over the last 25 years is we've solidified a new kind of ruling class, but below that, people have become more and more individualized in a way, isolated, in the bad sense. I don't know in Austria, but in Britain, for instance, the people who want to join labor unions drastically falling. The number of people who actually are involved in voluntary activity in the third sector falling. But if you go up to the top of the class structure, you've seen forms of solidarity take place. People take care of each other. It's really very hard to go broke if you're part of this elite circle. It's a network, and somebody picks you up. So, you know, to me, looking at this as an analyst of capitalism, the question about how to have more solidarity is, just as you say, Ira, it's what kind of solidarity. It has to be a solidarity which sees itself in struggle with another solidarity, which is that of this very small, incredibly powerful group of people. Could I just respond to one other of the questions that you asked about? That's why, if I just, before I respond to this other question, the reason that the Democratic Party has put so much emphasis, if we spend the $700 billion to rescue these fat cats, on actually owning their businesses, is in part a belief that it's only by doing something like co-determination, as you have in Germany and Austria, that solidarity can be broken. This isn't just a notion of giving the public some money. It's also the notion that this form of solidarity, which becomes so naturalized to us in the last 20 years, will be broken apart. There will be actors who are not themselves rich, who do not dine at Caprice. I don't know what the Viennese example is.
There are many.
There are many, yeah. And that has proved a quite explosive, as you'll hear tonight if some of this is discussed. For Paulson, this is quite an explosive people. People who do not understand the financial system will have power, as opposed, of course, to the people who have understood it so well the last few weeks, but let's not go there. But that is a part of that kind of discussion. The ordinary person can never understand a credit default swap. And again, unlike us. So there is a practical consequence to looking at solidarity, I would say, is essentially, and I don't mean to sound like an old Marxist about this, but there is a sense in which we have arrived at a moment where one solidarity is pitched against another. This is not nice. It is a world of conflict. And so I'm a little easy. The phenomenon of solidarity is something that people have to learn in order not to be hurt, not just because they're moral. I'm a little worried about the way you've set up our discussion question.
So let me get out of the way and simply ask each of you, as you heard the other, what puzzles or question you would want to put.
Well, my question to you would really be how you see at this point Austria, which is a small country, to be sure, but a country because of its neutrality, which has had a lot of influence in the European Union. What role you would see yourself and Austria playing in trying to make a different kind of social compact than the neoliberal one in the past. Not that, as I say, you don't have the money of Germany, but you have in some way, a kind of power of persuasion, which I would be interested to know how you would want to use. How could we reform capitalism? How would you go about doing that?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's an interesting question, how to reform capitalism, because some of us started their political career by saying
it couldn't be
how we are going to destroy capitalism. And
I thought I wouldn't bring that up.
No
it's in his files, so there's not much you can do.
No problem.
What a heterogeneous group we are.
No, today in the morning we had the presidium meeting of the Socialist International, and I started by saying, well, friends, we are in a very glad moment. Our fiercest enemies are dead. Communism 20 years ago, neoliberal financial capitalism 2 weeks ago. The only question is still why socialism didn't celebrate the victory. So, this is how to open up the debate. But I think that if talking about how to reform or to make market economy again to the use of the people.
Right.
Because I think that's the fundamental question behind it.
And what I'm saying is it goes beyond regulation. It has to be more profound.
It has to go beyond regulation. This anyhow will be important and necessary, because it's ridiculous that we are living in a world where world trade is so small, and we have a World Trade Organization that set up rules and is able to implement decisions and ask countries to pay penalties and whatsoever. And then we have these huge international financial markets, no regulation at all. They can do what they want. And if this pyramid game at the end of the day is not working out, they are going to the taxpayers and say, well, modest 700 billion. That's not really exaggerated, no, isn't it? So that's for me is an obvious thing, that we need some sort of world financial organization that is dealing with financial markets in a proper manner. And of course, I mean,
what about restraint on globalization? Would you encompass that?
I would put it the following. I mean, what is so problematic about Washington Mutual and AIG and some of the others it's the systemic risk, no?
Yeah.
And this is what these guys knew, no? They thought, we are so huge, we are so powerful. At the end of the day, they have to bail us out. So there was sufficient ground for moral hazard, of course. This you have to distinguish from smaller institutions. I mean, who worries if, let's say, a smaller version of Lehman goes over the Jordan? Nobody minds. No? Nobody minds. So the distinction has to be, if there are financial institutions that have a size that can create a systemic risk, then these institutions have to follow a very sincere regulation, because we cannot allow, once again, that by the mere size of these institutions we are endangering the entire financial system, which has enormous consequences for the real economy. And below that, I think for small institutions who cannot endanger the system, we do not need really tougher regulations, because as they are working on basis of their own risk, I mean, at least I do not mind. So what I think is that we should not completely regulate the financial capitalism and go now with the pendulum to the completely other end of the spectrum. Mm-hmm. No, I think we do need useful regulation of these huge institutions, but at the same time allow financial market innovation whatsoever. At the end of the day, the fundamental wisdom of the third volume of the Capital of Karl Marx anyhow will not be changed, that money never will generate money. So I mean, there has to be something like a real economy if one really wants to generate revenues. Yeah. No, so this I think
Saskia wouldn't agree with you, but we'll come to that later.
No problem. We can disagree. But I think this.
But you know, I think the other side of this is that it is a financial crisis, but it's also the end of it is a social crisis as well. It's, we've never asked businesses not to move, to close factories and move abroad, for instance, because that would touch on the market. What I hope is that kind of culture of neoliberalism, which became so deep, so that the notion that there would be something not very modern about saying, no, we forbid you to put people out of work. That's not, it's not of today. What I'd hope that something that would be good to come out of this is that a lot of the kind of moral structure, which is very deep in us, of this moral ideology of neoliberalism, goes. And that means, I think it gives, for people like you, who have the power to control these firms, to say, that's not acceptable. We won't let you do business that way. You have no moral right to do it. That's a culture shift that simply making sure that they're more prudent is, I think, it's necessary but not sufficient.
It's necessary and not sufficient because we also have to, and this is my second point, to limit their space of maneuvering. So
exactly. That's